Faith is front and center on the Texas race for the U.S. Senate. On one hand, we have the Republicans that are fighting, the last two Republicans standing to try to get the nomination. We have John Cornyn, the incumbent, the man who just for transparency up front, I don't like him. We have Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton trying to unseat him with or without the help of President Trump. This has turned into a flashpoint for Texas, for the Republican Party, for the MAGA movement, because obviously you have on one hand you have a guy that has been very dedicated in Ken Paxton, very dedicated to President Trump, to MAGA, who deserves President Trump's endorsement. Unfortunately, he also comes with some baggage, and he's got a lot of enemies within the Republican Party that are prompting President Trump to shy away from him. On the other hand, you have John Cornyn, who has been a never Trumper the entire time. The entire time. Okay, this is a guy who he's slick. He's been willing to throw President Trump under the bus. He's been very. I'm not going to detail all that. You can look that up. Okay, if you don't know, John Cornyn is a snake, a rhino, a bad dude as far as the MAGA movement and as far as America and as far as Texas is concerned, then it's time to educate yourself. I'm not going to do that. I want to focus on the faith aspect of it. And a story that came out, that was originally posted, I believe, over at National Pulse. We have it currently over at conservativeplaybook.com. Cornyn launches, quote, Faith Advisory Council, featuring pastors tied to Soros-funded pro-amnesty groups. I mean, because of course he does. You know, he's trying to protect his job, and he says, "Hey, let's throw out the faith card." And who does he get? He gets the rhino equivalent of evangelicals. I'm not going to read the whole article. You can find this again over at conservativeplaybook.com. But from the bullet points, Senator John Cornyn launched a faith advisory council on March 10th as part of his evangelical outreach effort ahead of the May Republican primary runoff against Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. Three of the council members, Dr. Jack Graham, Pastor Max Lucado, and Dr. Gus Reyes, are affiliated with the Evangelical Immigration Table, the EIT. This is a group that advocates for chain migration and pathway to citizenship for illegal aliens. We're talking about Texas here, okay? This isn't California. This isn't purple areas like Arizona or New Mexico or Nevada. This should be, I still believe that Texas should be considered red. And yet, constantly we hear, and we've been hearing this for years, about how Texas is about to flip. Texas is about to flip. Texas is close to being purple. Texas is going blue. Well, this might be it, folks. This might be the year because, again, we're faced with the potential of having a rhino versus. I'm going to be talking about his Democrat competitor here soon because he is dangerous on a global scale. Okay, and he's not just dangerous for Texas. He's not just dangerous politically. This man may represent the tip of the spear when it comes to the destruction of the Christian faith here in the United States of America, and that is not hyperbole. But let's focus on. Just going to drop that, and then that's your teaser to stay tuned for the next segment of today's podcast. But anyway, back to Cornyn. He gets these guys in there, and he's running in Texas, and he gets these guys in there that are pushing for pathways to citizenship for illegal aliens, pushing for chain migration, all about birthright citizenship. You take every left-leaning component. I'm not talking about open borders. I'm not talking about radical leftist ideas. These guys aren't crazy, but they do lean very much to the center and to the left of center. We're not just talking about, we should just focus on deporting the criminals, and we should find some way to figure it out for the people that are here who've been here for I disagree with those sentiments, but at least that's sort of like milquetoast centrist, Whereas what these guys are promoting are to the left of center. These are ideas that are not supported by the general public. Okay, these aren't radical. Oh my gosh, they're not like not staunch conservatives. No, this is again to the left of center, and this is who John Cornyn wants advising him on his Family Advisory Council, or I'm sorry, Faith Advisory Council. It's a ploy. It is a ploy, and that's it. And I hope that Texans are aware of that. And I hope that President Trump is aware of that. Not that his evangelical choices have been very good himself, but that's discussion for another day. The EIT is a project of the National Immigration Forum, which received millions in funding from George Soros' Open Societies Foundation and used the NIF as a financial pass-through to spread pro-mass immigration messaging among evangelical communities. I want to be clear. Okay, we're talking about an organization that is trying to disguise itself around or with the illusion of faith. Oh, sure, they got pastors. Okay, they got biblical professors and doctors. They got real, true, devout Christians who are just seem to be okay with going against biblical doctrines, such as nationalism, which is biblical, to be clear. Okay, the whole idea, open borders, that's in the Bible. No. Actually, it's not. It's nowhere in the Bible. Okay, let's not try to conflate the modern day leftist perception of what Jesus represented with today's politics. That's the pathway to very dangerous areas. And once you throw in the fact that George Soros is funding all this, that should be ding, 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 ring, ring every possible bell that you need rung. And just in case you weren't sure whether or not Cornyn was aligning himself with the wrong people. Pardon me. Ali Noorani, who led the National Immigration Forum from 2008 to 2022, publicly praised Cornyn in 2021. So this isn't his first rodeo of these guys, for sponsoring amnesty legislation, highlighting the senator's longstanding alignment with open borders advocacy. Graham, that's Dr. Graham, and Pastor Licado are also signatories to the EIT's Evangelical Statement of Principles for Immigration Reform, which explicitly calls for chain migration policies and a citizenship pathway for those in the country illegally. Again, there's nothing about this that is Christian. There's nothing about this that is American. There's nothing about this that is Texan. And there's definitely nothing about this that is MAGA or even really Republican. This is a full-blown rhino, Democrat-run operation. And John Cornyn is embracing it. He's promoting it, and he's using it to try to promote himself to fool the masses, or as many of them as are willing to be fooled into thinking that, oh, he's such an evangelical, he's such a Christian, he's reading his Bible and taking cues from that, and that's why he wants to give illegal aliens amnesty. I really wish that Paxton didn't have so much baggage. I really like the guy, and I acknowledge that he's made some enemies, and not necessarily in a good way. A lot of times you're going to make enemies. I've made lots of enemies in my life for my opinions, but it seems like Paxton has made some appropriate and right enemies, but others it's like there was no reason to even go down that road. I'm not going to dwell on it. I'm just going to say that he has baggage that isn't all just, it's because he's such a staunch conservative or such a MAGA guy. No, he made some blunders, I think, in his career. Pissed off some people that it wasn't necessary. Didn't promote the America First cause. Didn't promote the Texas First cause. It just, he let it get to him. He got personal at times. And again, not going to dwell. I just wish, because if it wasn't for that baggage, I think it's a slam dunk no-brainer. Of course, President Trump is endorsing him, probably endorses him before the primary, and maybe is able to eliminate the need for a runoff altogether. Just get rid of Cornyn, the backstabbing snake, anti-Trump, anti-Republican, anti-American, anti-Texas guy that he is, and focus on Paxton. But like you said, Paxton's got some baggage. We've got to overcome it. But I don't think it's impossible. Back to the article. This is not Cornyn's first controversy over immigration group ties. A video previously surfaced of him praising LULAC, L-U-L-A-C, a left-leaning organization that has fought Texas sanctuary city bans, backed abortion advocacy, and helped illegal immigrants resist federal deportation efforts. To say that Cornyn is a snake is not just about his stances pertaining to MAGA or Donald Trump. He's a snake for Texas. I mean, he continues to bite Texas in the butt, and they continue to promote him. He's a good politician. He's a horrible, horrible person, and terrible Republican, and not a conservative at all. The revelations raise questions, serious questions, about Cornyn's credibility on immigration enforcement among conservative Texas voters, particularly as he faces Paxton, a Trump-line candidate, in what is shaping up to be a defining primary battle. Now, President Trump deferred. He punted, and he did it the right way. He said, look, I'm not going to cast I'm not going to give an endorsement on this race or any race until we pass the Save America Act. Amen, brother, for that. Now he's saying he's not going to sign any legislation until the next legislation he signs will be the Save America Act, which I covered yesterday why John Thune has a pathway to get there, okay? He does. I know that he says that the talking filibuster wouldn't work, and I tend to agree. It's the consequences of the talking filibuster will outweigh the potential benefits of the passing the Save America Act, and without a guarantee. Look, if you told me that, look, we're basically going to shut down the Senate for 3 months to get the Save America Act passed, I'm down for that. But what is probably going to end up happening is Senate can be essentially shut down, clogged with talking filibuster play for many, many months, with no guarantee that the Save America Act will eventually get passed, or that he could even be passed before the election. So again, reluctantly, I'm with Thune on that one. But there are pathways through which he can do it. And the only real way to get this done is by eliminating the filibuster altogether. I made the case yesterday for why that should happen. And he does have the pathway to do that without losing face, without pissing everybody off who, like me, I'm in favor of keeping the filibuster, but not in this case. I wish we could just get rid of it and then put it back in and lock it in. Of course, I would probably regret that, in the future when we need it gone again, but whatever. Point is, we need the government reopened. We need the Save America Act passed. Both of them are extraordinarily popular. Okay? These represent the will of the people, and as such, should represent the will of even those Republicans who would fight against eliminating the filibuster, such as Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, Mitch McConnell's handlers, Weekend at Bernie's there, Rand Paul, Tom Tillis. They probably can't do anything with Tillis, but they can get the others, I think, to temporarily or whatever. I don't know. Figure it out, Thune. This is ridiculous. That's how important it is that we get this done, that I'm hijacking my segment about John Cornyn and inserting the need for the Save America Act and getting rid of the filibuster, opening up the government all the way, getting our TSA agents. As much as I dislike the TSA as a whole, I do want to get the agents paid, and I want to stop the desperate slowdown of travel that's currently happening and all the other repercussions of this Democrat shutdown. Bottom line is this, as far as Cornyn is concerned. Don't buy the hype. Don't believe that he is don't even believe, I wouldn't even say staunch conservative. Don't think that he's a conservative. Don't think that he's a Republican. And don't let him use this newly formed council, the Faith Advisory Council, the FAC. Okay, don't let him use the FAC to make you think that he is some sort of devout Christian. He's a Soros Christian, which means that he's not a Christian at all.
The best coffee out there is from a Christian company. Go to patriot.tv/coffee and lock in.
All right, right, still in Texas. Let's talk about James Talarico. He's the Democrat nominee for the United States Senate in Texas. He is allegedly a pastor, a Presbyterian pastor, totally woke guy, and maybe the most dangerous politician in the United States of America today, potential politician. I know he's a politician. He's in the state house or whatever, but if he were to win the U.S. Senate seat in the state of Texas, I would argue that that would mark one of the most important, if not the most important turning point in America's evangelical history. And you might say, wow, Rucker, that's a whole bunch of hyperbole right there. But hear me out, because I think I can make a pretty clear case for it. This is a guy who is flaunting his anti-biblical, quote-unquote, Christian perspectives. He believes there are 6 genders. He believes that God is non-binary, which I know that's one of those ones where if you listen to everything that he's saying in context, it wasn't as bad as it sounds when we say he thinks that God is non-binary. Like he was pointing to how he's not really man or woman and yada, yada, yada. But in context, if we look at what his intent was to attach God's quote-unquote gender to the LGBTQIA plus supremacy movement. In other words, what he said was technically true, not the non-binary part, but his evidence for being non-binary. But this was about promoting, the false rainbow of LGBTQIA plus, not some technicality about God's gender. Anyway, that one's ugly. Perhaps most importantly, he claimed recently that putting the 10 Commandments anywhere, such as schools, is a form of violence. So here's a supposed alleged pastor who believes that the laws of God are violence. He wants Americans to believe that showing kids what God decrees as his permanent laws of how we as human beings are supposed to act, what the laws that we're supposed to abide by throughout our lives. He says that that's violence. This guy is dangerous, not just as a politician. He's dangerous because of what he represents. He represents the deterioration of proper biblical faith. We can make claims, and I often do, that there are dangers with the Red-Green Alliance, right? You look at people like Zoran Mamdani, who merge Marxism with political Islam and wield it as a powerful weapon, despite the obvious contradictions between radical leftism or Marxism and the tenets of Islam. They shouldn't align, except they align perfectly when we consider just how their enemies are aligned. In other words, they might not necessarily agree with each other, but the goals that they want to achieve are properly aligned. And amongst those goals includes the destruction of the Christian faith here in the United States of America and across the world. And again, that's not hyperbole either. This isn't about kumbaya, let's all live together, whether you're believing in God and Jesus Christ or Allah or Vishnu or whoever. No, this isn't about that. They want to destroy Christians. They do. They really do. And that's always been the case. Whether you're talking about Islam or Marxism, whether you want to call it globalism or powers and principalities, it is the Christian faith that has always been the end goal target. Sure, they go after other components, other aspects of it. For example, taking the 10 Commandments, taking the Bible out of schools. That was not because, we have to have a separation of church and state. It says so in the Constitution. Actually, no, it doesn't. Okay? And actually, the separation of church and state was designed specifically to prevent the state from infecting the church, not the other way around. But that's just, history and facts. Those things aren't important in today's post-truth society. This man, James Talarico, is more than just a bad politician. He's not more than just a radical Democrat. He's more than just a false pastor. He does represent the deterioration from within, because we can say Islam is a challenge, and it is. We can say that atheism is a challenge, and it is. But the real destruction can only happen from within the church itself. And that destruction, as we've detailed, or no, but it's been detailed in the book of Jude, it's been detailed in both the books of Daniel as well as Revelation, that this is going to happen. Is it going to happen today, right now, here in the United States of America? I don't know. But if it does, James Talarico may be the key to that. Because he perverts the Bible. He perverts the faith. He does it in a way that sure sounds semi-logical sometimes, especially to those who are most influenceable. And that's the big concern here. That's the real fear. Is it not just about, we don't want the Democrats to get a majority in the Senate? No, we don't. But that's secondary to, we don't want the sentiment of many, especially the remaining Democrat Christians, though few they may be, as well as those Christians in the independent or conservative or Republican wings that are lukewarm. They're not quite properly firm in their faith. Maybe they go to church on Sunday, maybe they don't, but they don't practice their faith throughout their week, throughout their lives. And maybe they're not reading their Bible enough. Maybe they're just not solid enough with their faith. And it's people like James Talarico that can influence them in a direction that takes them to oblivion. And thereby, if this can happen with enough of them, can take our entire nation down in oblivion, or to oblivion. I keep saying that's not hyperbole. It's not hyperbole. But of all of the attacks on the Christian faith over the decades, over the centuries here in the United States of America, there were attacks even in the early days, as stalwart as they were, our founding fathers, there were still challenges when it came to safeguarding the faith. And they found what I believe to be a nearly perfect way to do so. And the way you do it is by protecting all faiths. If you're not going to be a theocracy, which we should not be, then you have to allow for open debate. James Talarico represents the end of open debate, and he does it from a position of alleged Christian authority. As a pastor, as a Presbyterian pastor, he can make a far greater impact on the direction of faith leaders and their flocks than any pastor, more so than any politician. The kingly priest, right? That's something that has not existed for millennia, not since Melchizedek. And Jesus Christ will come as that new leader, who is both a king and a priest. But in the meantime, when you start melding in people like James Talarico, who will be a false king and a false priest at the same time, now you have the recipe for true disaster. I know that I will rip on John Cornyn all day, and I will, because he's just not a good representative of the United States, of Texas, or of the Republican Party. But would I take him over James Talarico? If John Cornyn is able to win the primary and beat Ken Paxton, then as much as I dislike him, I see him as an obstacle to making America great again. James Talarico, I see him as an existential threat for America going forward.